this astaxanthin supplement, I hear it's 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, 100 times stronger than vitamin E, and 800 times stronger than CoQ10?
Yes, astaxanthin supports joint health, memory health, even anti-aging and immune health. This Hawaii brand delivers 3 times more nature-identical astaxanthin to your body and is a better buy than the competition. It's called Xanthicin. Safely manage your inflammatory health with Xanthicin. It's pure and highly absorbed, providing greater benefits. Visit getxantho.com and these retailers.
All right, out to going, everybody. Merry Christmas and a happy holidays to everybody out there. It is finally game week once again, as Hawaii is a day away from kickoff in the Hawaii Bowl against Memphis, coming up on New Year's Eve. That's tomorrow as we record this on a Thursday morning. It's episode 17 of Hawaii Football Now, presented by Xanthicin. Mahalo also to our sponsor, Spectrum Mobile. Jordan and Hunter back with you. Hunter, how's it going, first of all? I know you're spending a little time visiting some family. Always nice. But for our opening drive segment here, what's the Christmas plans look like?
I appreciate it, Jordan. Yeah. Aloha from Oklahoma, actually. That is where we are recording today. We went hunting the other day at the beautiful temperature of 12 degrees Fahrenheit, sitting out in a duck blind. And so Christmas looks a little bit different than sunny Hawaii, where you find yourself. So,
yeah, I was at Farrington last night for the Division II state
nice.
semifinals. And it was like 70 degrees, windy and a little rainy, and everybody was freezing. But it wasn't 12 degrees. So that, I guess we should stop, whining with the tropical chill.
Hawaii has softened this Midwestern boy up tremendously. There once was a time where that wouldn't be any big deal at all. Put on a coat and just go get the job done. Those days are past. My brothers and my dad make fun of me all the time because I'm a yuppie Hawaii boy now, for sure.
That's right. You get to live in Hawaii most of the year, so I think you might make out in that little exchange. That's a lot of fun. Of course, some of the Christmas plans for some folks are going to be either going to the Ching Complex to take in the Hawaii Bowl on Christmas Eve, or like myself, usually got it on the TV as we get ready for like Christmas Eve dinner. So it's always going to be a fun. And after a month off, basically a month of turmoil, a month of rebirth in a way for the University of Hawaii. The Rainbow's back on the field for a 4th straight bowl game. It's only the 15th bowl game in program history when you look at it over the course of time, right? The proliferation of bowl games has made things much easier for programs to get into bowl games. So as you would imagine, basically 10 of those coming in the Hawaii Bowl. So basically 10 within the last 20 years of their 15 all time. It's also the first ever meeting against the Tigers out of now the American Athletic Conference. And so Hunter, kind of starting here with the Hawaii Bowl, and we've talked a whole bunch over the month about a whole bunch of different things, but now we can actually get into the game. Is this because of such the long layoff, because there are so many new faces in key positions, and we'll kind of get into that as we go through it, a lot of changes basically in the 2 deep from a month ago in the regular season finale against Wyoming. Is this more of the end, a culmination of this 2021 season, or is it more so, we're really starting a brand new year?
That's a really great way of putting it, Jordan. Kind of tough to say. From what I've been hearing from friends of mine in that locker room, the feeling that we've gone into with the last month of transfer portal, as well as just so much transition. I think that's an appropriate word for the last month with Hawaii football. It's just been transition. Yes, technically this is the last time this group of guys will put the pads on together. So in some aspects, yes, it's the end of one season, but with so much looming with so many of our commitments still yet to be made in the coming weeks and months. It's February 18th, right? Is the end of signing day, the official signing day. This will tell the actual health of our program. So much can be said about what's going on in the locker room at practice and stuff, but really just you have to wait and see what we can put on the field to determine the actual health of a team, especially in light of one of our main players, Chevin Cordero, leaving after the last game of regular season. So my answer to that is yes. The little bit of both there. I think it's much more having to do with next season, though, with everything that has taken place.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. It's very transitional, right? This period of Hawaii football, it's very in between. The bridge, if you will, it's the single game season. The bridge kind of, yeah,
Liminals,
right,
yeah, neither here nor there.
right in between, right? And
Yeah.
so, you mentioned the health of the team, and that is another factor, literally, not just kind of the health of the locker room and the culture, but the reports coming out within the last couple of days about issues perhaps with health and safety protocols due to COVID, related to COVID, obviously. And we're seeing it kind of rear its head across the country, across the national sporting landscape. And we're talking about teams pulling out of bowl games. We're talking about postponements in professional sports leagues, a pause of the NHL season. And so, Hawaii not really immune to that, even though we are separated. I mean, you've seen it like the Iolani Classic locally, the basketball tournament. That tournament was really affected by some of the health and safety protocols there. But you have like Stephen Tsai, the Honolulu Star advertiser, tweeting out that Hawaii Athletics is taking extra safety precautions because of possible COVID-19 exposure to a few members of the Hawaii football team. The Warriors will continue to practice and participate safely in the Hawaii Bowl activities. This was a couple of days ago. The Hawaii Bowl, in response to some of those developments, basically canceled the joint luau and held separate team only functions ahead of Friday's game earlier this week. So you lose out on a little bit of the bowl week festivities, but I'm sure everybody involved just wants to make sure they are able to play that game. You had, what was it, Texas A&M having to pull out of a bowl game. Like, Twitter was abuzz and like trying to find a replacement team for some of these bowl games, and hopefully crossing our fingers, right? We're basically a little more than 24 hours away from the kickoff of the Hawaii Bowl here as we record this. But, it's a fact of the matter, knock on wood. And I think a lot of it has to do with sheer luck, but I think there is a little bit of, accomplishment to it for Hawaii, where they've done a pretty good job, quite honestly, these 2 years, the 2020 year, where you were dealing with much different protocols pre-vaccine and now here post-vaccine, in how you approach these things and how we learn through the science and whatnot. But for the University of Hawaii, right, they haven't had a game canceled, much unlike a lot of programs around the country. They've been able to kind of keep their guys eligible, healthy. And, I know a lot of that has to do with diligence and whatnot, and a little bit of luck, but I do give them, a fair amount of credit for navigating their way through these 2 seasons relatively unscathed. But we may be seeing, some changes necessitated by what's developing here. We don't know players. We don't know the number of players. You've heard all kinds of speculation as to, the sheer number or whatnot, but all indications are at this point Thursday morning that they'll be okay to go. They'll be able to play. We just don't know who may be missing.
Yeah. And I think a little bit of that is just our location and the uniqueness of Hawaii. Some would critique that, the governing powers that be have been maybe a little bit too harsh with their dealing with our football program and trying to keep people safe. But at the same time, we have done a pretty good job with keeping our players and coaching staff healthy. Winter also doesn't hit Hawaii climately as hard as on the mainland. And I know that's one thing we've noticed with COVID is the connection with the winter seasons, the coming of colder months, and people being more vulnerable to this. And you can see it around the nation right now. So I wonder if that has a part to play with it as well. But, just back to the Hawaii Bowl, I kind of appreciate that they're not doing the joint team elements ramping up to Hawaii Bowl. I always had a weird experience with that, because the other team's there. I get the marketing behind it. We're trying to do this like joint aloha, hanging out, meshing with the other team. When you put the pads on, you're ready to go. Like, you're wanting to tear those guys' heads off. So I don't really like the whole shaking of hands, exchanging of stories when in 2 days I could be blowing your knee out. You know what I mean? It's a little weird. I get it a little bit more with a sport like baseball, definitely with golf, maybe even potentially with basketball too. There's a certain brute force with football that it helps when you don't know the other players to wrap your head around. I'm gonna come and tear your head off to help you play football at your best. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you, right? There is a kind of unspoken understanding that we are about to go out and inflict pain on each other, and so
Yes.
it's a weird line to kind of walk when it's like, hey, pleasantries and everybody and whatnot, and hey, welcome to Hawaii, and then we're gonna go try and make you feel us a little bit on Friday afternoon. So it's
Yeah.
it's a little strange in that aspect. Um, but now that that is kind of off the table, and the teams will more or less be separated until you get into it. And to be quite honest, as you've pointed out, it's much more akin to a regular game week, right?
Yeah.
It's much
Totally.
more normal than the interaction level at the very least, as you get into that. So it's gonna be really interesting to see who is out there, right? Because of some departures, we naturally see some changes in the two deep. Haven't had a lot of access into exactly what that would look like. We turn our attention to basically the official two deep that gets put out there, right? And some notable changes, obviously, with Braden Shager now as QB1 with Chevin Cordero's departure.
Yep.
Kamali'i Akina is elevated to the number 2 spot behind Shager. At least that is the way it is listed on the depth chart. He is the backup there. Some other notable differences on the offensive side of the football in terms of the depth chart in comparison to the season finale at Wyoming. You got Maurice Ta'ala basically listed as the backup center. Iliki Tanuvasa strictly listed as the backup guard. Tusolo Vaipulu at right guard as opposed to being listed as well as the backup center. Stephen Bernal Went is in there as the backup left guard. The starting lineup basically intact on the line. Il Manning, Michael Vanterpool, Cole Leval, Solo Vaipulu, and Gene Pryor from left to right across that offensive line. You also have got Stephen Fiesel, now listed as the number 2 tight end. We know that big game he had, the 2 touchdown performance against Wyoming, sort of out of that tight end H-back look. He is technically listed as the number 2, co-number 2, if you will, with Kamuela Borden behind the starter Caleb Phillips. Same starting receivers, basically, with Marner Bowens and Calvin Turner, same number 2 guys behind them, Jonah Ponoke, Jared Smart, and Kwali Nishigai. And then the interesting part, right? Dedrick Parsons, no surprise, elevated to the clear-cut number 1 at running back. And then you got Calvin Turner listed as the number 2 running back on the depth chart. Could we perhaps see him a little bit more in the backfield as opposed to the slot, like we saw most of this season, way maybe a little bit more what we saw in 2020 with him in the backfield? They also do include some notes on Deshae Bryant, the 5'10" junior college transfer for the University of Hawaii. He's got 1 carry on the year. He's sort of, if you look through the notes, basically the number 3 running back at this point. It'd be interesting to see what kind of run Brian gets in there. But I got to imagine carries in this ball, it's going to be a whole lot of Parson and a whole lot of Calvin Turner. But anything else stand out to you, Hunter, on the offensive side of the football? Again, some of those changes we knew absolutely were coming, like Shager and whatnot. But seeing Fiso kind of elevate himself is probably a big development for this team. And then the fact that Calvin Turner is listed as also the number 2 running back.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is just fluff. Rolo used to play all sorts of games with the other team with what they knew about us. I remember there was a game where Cole McDonald was even injured, and they had one of our tight ends put on his jersey that had kind of long blonde hair, just to throw people off on game day when Cole wasn't even in attendance. I think coaches can kind of get carried away with that kind of stuff. I don't know how much really, truthfully, the other team reads into marketing and things like that. But I mean, a couple things that I just know from talking with the guys and being around our team right now. I know that Armani Eden, who was the 3rd string QB for the majority of this season with the departure of Chevin Cordero, has truly been in competition with Brandon Shager all throughout this last month to try to earn that starting job. It will be Braden taking the snaps coming into this game. But I think there's a reason why he's not on this depth chart right now, because no one's seen him. No one knows anything of him. But for our faithful out there, keep an eye out for number 16 in Garber, in time where we might need him. Or if Shager goes down, very similar style to Chevin Cordero, a true dual threat style of a quarterback. And I think they're keeping him under wraps for a reason, because he's going to be really exciting. I'm really hoping he gets his opportunity, because he's been hungry for a while. But then additionally, in talking with, just a couple other guys on the team, I think, and we did something similar back in the Rolo era, when you've got a versatile player like Calvin Turner married with a freshman quarterback like Brandon Shager, who may not have as much expertise or experience behind the line of scrimmage, to kind of help with that. You can always bring Wildcat into the picture. And so I think we're going to see an awful lot of Calvin back there kind of just doing his thing. I think they're going to try to ride the Calvin Turner horse as long as they can, especially with Chevin leaving. And, in different times in garbage time throughout this year, they even had Calvin go back there almost detrimentally in the Fresno game, to take snaps, different situations. They trust him to handle the football and do what we all know that he can do. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that this time around, especially when, Shager did well in the times that he went in there, but we didn't really lean on him as heavily as we would a true starter. A lot more checkdowns, a lot more kind of tempo throws, I would call them. Nothing really outside of maybe 10, 15 yards, keeping him within kind of a comfort zone to protect the team as a whole, but protect him as a player too. I don't foresee us expanding that far out of that as an offense.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask you about that, Hunter, and expanding maybe on that thought. Is that what you expect to see from this offense, right? Because it was different, right? When Shager was in there, it was a run heavy offense, play action. They didn't ask him to do too much, and I think smartly so, right? I mean, the guy was a true freshman, never played collegiate football before, and so you don't want to ask him to do too much. I don't think that's a bad thing. But what we saw from this offense, which really evolved late in the season, they started throwing it a bit more, right? It wasn't a run first attack. It was still a good rushing attack, but it was much more Chevin Cordero kind of letting him loose a little bit more. And I get it. He's gone now, and you've got a different guy back there, but it was an offense that looked much more productive just from the eye test. And then you just look at the numbers in the last couple of games against Colorado State and Wyoming. And so do you expect to see what we saw early on with Braden Shager in there at quarterback, or do they in turn kind of cut him loose a little bit, knowing that, hey, if he's the guy going forward, is the offense going to look a little bit more like we saw at the end of the season?
Yeah, you bring up a couple interesting points right there. I think this coaching staff has made it clear that they're very focused on getting to bowl games and trying to win bowl games. I don't know if that's necessarily for the bonuses that are included in there. I know that doesn't hurt with that. And so with that in mind, I think these guys are going to do anything in their power to try to win this football game. Now, when Shager was in there earlier in the season, we had Day Hunter in some of his strongest games. And so with everything that's gone down, everyone listening obviously knows that he is now with Liberty University and is no longer a University of Hawaii Rainbow Warrior. And so with the absence of him, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage the kind of new duo between Calvin Turner and Parsons as kind of our two running backs to go forward. Chevin did his best this year when the pocket kind of broke down and he was able to kind of evade and improvise on his own. From the limited stuff that I've seen from Shager, I don't necessarily feel like that is his strong suit as a quarterback. He's a little bit more of a true pocket guy, a little bit more stand tall, go through your reads sort of a feeling whenever I watch his style of play from the quarterback position. So I don't know. I do remember in a couple of times he was in there, they called those four verts. That they wouldn't do that unless they had confidence in his ability to throw the ball down the field. They weren't necessarily super successful in those play calling efforts, but he did, throw a couple of touchdowns whenever he was in there. He can hit guys and create plays. I know that one back shoulder ball to Turner in that Fresno game was beautiful. And from what I do hear from guys in that locker room, he can spin the rock. So he's not there by accident. He is a talented guy, though a freshman and maybe inexperienced. He is, from a skill perspective, where he's supposed to be. So I think we might actually end up seeing, again, Jordan, I know you're going to love to hear this, an offense we haven't seen yet. They are very comfortable in kind of reinventing themselves, sometimes successfully, other times maybe not, every step of the way to try to win football games.
And that would be pretty exciting, right? Who knows what we might see out there. They've had a month to work on it. We mentioned it. It is the interim. It is sort of a 1-game season, so they've had time to throw in a few more wrinkles on the defensive side of the football. Not a ton of surprises there. Hugh Nelson gets elevated basically into a starting quarter spot opposite Cortez Davis with the departure of Cam Lockridge, who I just recently sort of confirmed that he is off to South Alabama to continue his career via the transfer portal. You've got the usual suspects basically in there. Darius Muasau anchoring the linebacker core, right there in the 2 deep. This defense has been so apt at taking the football away. You lose, obviously one of your starting corners. It's a team that loves to throw the football in Memphis. We'll get into the Tigers a little bit more in depth here in just a second. But after this long layoff, this defense is riding a lot of momentum, including that Wyoming game where they, arguably put together one of their better performances of the season. They played well, particularly in big spots against, quality teams, Fresno, San Jose, San Diego State. Do you expect to see more of the same for this group? And how much does a long layoff sort of affect a defense that had been, kind of rolling? Does that hurt at all? Does it help? I mean, some of these guys get a chance to get healthy, sure. But they had put together something quite nice over the course of the season, right? Top 3 in the country in terms of takeaways.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think you would know what I'm referring to here, Jordan, as a fellow Bears fan. When you have a team that has an amazing defense, there's almost a quiet comfort in knowing at least one half of the football is going to be taken care of. Because offenses, so much can go this way or that way with tipped balls, sacks, fumbles. Offense can be kind of a fickle beast, but when you have a good defense, it's pretty reliable week in, week out. And those listening, that is the narrative of the Chicago Bears the entire time I've been alive. That's been the identity of the Bears. So that's kind of what I meant with that. But that's kind of the new identity of Hawaii Rainbow Warrior football right now is tough in the trenches, and we turn the ball over. We know how to force fumbles, get in passing lanes, tip balls, catch them. That is the identity of the Todd Graham era, is a strong defense that has shown time and time again that we can turn the ball over. So, or cause turnovers, I should say. That's a better way of putting it. And I think we're going to do exactly the same way. I'm predicting at least 2 from our defense. It's just these guys are ball hawks. We like to call that as players, guys that just find their way to the ball in the right time, the right positioning. I'm excited to see him again, man. I think that the time off allows them to kind of lick some wounds, give it that necessary time, because everyone's nursing something, whether it just be a nick, a bruise, a strain, They may not necessarily have it on an injury report, but everybody at this point in the season has spent some time in the hot tub, in the training table, trying to get things mended. So a month off to put the feet up, and mentally too. The season's long. I know this month for the guys, they can at least think about some other things besides football in preparation for this bowl game.
Yeah, it has been a long journey to get to this point, and the fact that they thought the season was over, and then they get the renewed life with the Hawaii Bowl berth. So it's been a little stop and go at times. All right, kind of looking at Memphis here, the Tigers, as they come in. It's the second straight bowl game where Hawaii faces an American opponent. It was Houston last year in that New Mexico Bowl, defeated the Cougars. This is a Tigers program that had been very, very competitive, right, on a national landscape, nationally ranked routinely, particularly under Mike Norvell, former offensive coordinator under Todd Graham, now the Florida State head coach. One of his top assistants, Ryan Silverfield, took over basically for the bowl game 2 seasons ago. And so this is his second full year as the head coach of the Tigers. He's 14-10 overall. Tigers went 6-6 this year, had to beat Tulane in their final game of the season to get to 6-6 in bowl eligibility. Went 3-5 in the American, tied for 7th there. They played a ton of close games. 4 of their 6 losses were by 6 points or less. 3 of their 6 losses, 3 points or less. And then on the other side, they won 4 games by 6 points or less. So like basically 8 of their 12 games were played within a touchdown. And it was a whole lot of really tight contests and kind of flip a coin really in how those turned out. As expected, this Memphis team scores a lot of points, right? They average over 30 points a game. They also give up just shy of 30 points a game at 29.3. They run the football fairly effectively, 137 yards on the ground. They give up over 165 on the ground. That is maybe one of the strengths that Hawaii can play to on their side of the football, attacking maybe one of the weaknesses for Memphis defensively. They throw it for basically 300 a game. That has been the MO for this program since Mike Norvell took over, and now Ryan Silverfield basically kind of continuing that trend, if you will. He is another Todd Graham disciple. Those guys know each other. He served as an offensive analyst at Arizona State back in 2015. So those guys have crossed paths. The coaching tree from Todd Graham is pretty extensive. I mean, that's one thing you got to give him. He has put a lot of guys into head coaching positions.
Everybody.
Yeah, and he is exactly. He is connected to the head coach at Florida State and the head coach at the University of Florida, both were offensive coordinators at him. Now that Billy Napier took the job in Gainesville, going over from Louisiana Lafayette. It's incredible. And so with that type of offense, it all starts and stops with the quarterback, right? And they've got a true freshman of their own out of Denton, Texas, and Seth Hennigan. Threw for over 3,300 yards this year, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. Interestingly enough, he and Braden Shager actually played against each other in high school when they're 2 of the 13 true freshman quarterbacks to start a game in the FBS this season. They last met in the Class 5A Division I Region 2 final in January, like this calendar year, where Hennigan's Denton Ryan High School defeated Shager's Highland Park High School 17-7 on their way to the Class 5A state title. And so they started off the season, well, not the season, the 2021 year, in a state playoff game, and now they're going to play each other in a bowl game. What a wild year for these 2 youngsters.
Yeah, I was a film major in college, so I love a good story, and just the uniqueness of the craziness that was this last month of Hawaii football. And then we find our way here, and just the interconnectedness with the coaches and then with the players too. I might be going too deep to say fate, Jordan, but at the same time, it's pretty unique where these guys played each other in a state final game last year, and then their coaches have a linked lineage. Well, granted, that's not that crazy of a thing, as we've come to find out with this coach. He seems to know anybody and everything associated with college football. Yeah, it's cool to get these kind of underlying stories involved with what we didn't think was even going to happen for us. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to go down against Memphis tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's a talented team, no doubt about it. And as we mentioned, that 6-6 record could have been even better if a few of those tight games went their way. they're missing a few guys for various reasons as well, kind of similar to the University of Hawaii. Their leading rusher, Brandon Thomas, who had 8 touchdowns on the season, is out injured. He's missed the last few games. So they got Rodriguez Clark and Marcavius Weaver sort of splitting duty back there. Those 2 guys combined for 525 yards, 7 touchdowns. So, they basically had to have 2 guys produce what Thomas was doing. And then they got Calvin Austin the third, who opted out of the bowl game. He is a first-team all-conference selection. He's going to prepare for the draft. Like, this dude's a stud. He is by far their leading receiver at over 1,100 yards, 74 receptions, 8 touchdowns. He's got 26 more catches and 429 more yards than the second leading receiver on the team. Wow. So they went to him a ton. But they do have a really good tight end, and he was actually their number 2 pass catcher in Sean Dykes. He was another first-team all-conference selection. So they've got to really fill in. Eddie Lewis, Gabriel Rogers, and Javon Ivory are now their top 3 receivers. Their right guard, Dylan Parham's a really good one as well. He was another first-team all-conference guy. But that side of the football, they put up points, as we mentioned, but a lot of that came because of Thomas and Austin, and they're going to be without those 2 guys. So kind of like Hawaii, they're going to have to replace, some pretty key players on that offensive side of the football. The defense is more or less intact. J.J. Russell is a really good linebacker, kind of Darius Muasau. He just tackle machine, 123 tackles in 12 games, basically over 10 a game, 6.5 for loss. John Tate's kind of their lead defensive lineman. Quindell Johnson anchors the secondary. Both of those guys, second-team all-conference selections. And so before we take a little halftime break here, Hunter, what do you expect of the matchup here? This is a team in Memphis that tries to remain balanced, but will test you, no doubt about it, through the air.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, their leading rusher, Brandon Thomas, if he's out of there, if I'm Darius Muasau, I'm licking my chops thinking about going up against a backup running back for these guys. So I'm going to try to get back there and get him as quickly as possible. The one thing, though, with their number 2 pass catcher being a tight end, I know that's why San Diego State usually has our number, because they pass the ball really well to their tight ends. We've never historically matched up that well with tight ends. I don't necessarily know if that's just in the DNA of our team, or, a lot of times you're having to match up maybe a drop down safety or an outside linebacker trying to cover one of those tight ends. And so I think they will be trying to shoot to optimize that against us. Look for that guy, Sean Dykes, to be one of the influencers for their offense. I think they're going to try to do that, especially without their leading receiver. So, which also helps us too, because we've lost a couple of guys at the cornerback position, and having someone fill in also at safety. So for Kai Kaneshiro, who left a few weeks back. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm sure they're saying the same thing for us too. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, where maybe in the season where you might have game prepped for a team, a lot is up in the air now with guys transferring. Both teams have a different face than what we did, 2 months ago. So it's going to be interesting, Jordan. I'm excited.
Yeah, and Dyke's kind of your prototypical modern tight end. Not a huge guy. He's 6'2", 224, the 5th-year player out of Houston, Texas. So, he's one of the more mobile guys, right? He isn't some big, huge, lumbering tight end Gronk style or something like that. So it might be, an interesting matchup against some of those safeties, whether it's Quentin Frazier or somebody else matched up in some of those situations. All right, a little extended first half of this 17th episode of Hawaii Football Now. We'll take a quick break, come back with a nice quick second half, and get everybody all set for the Hawaii Bowl tomorrow, as well as we got to get into signing day, early signing day, some big storylines coming out of that. So we will get to that on the other side of the break. But a reminder, only one brand delivers 3 times more astaxanthin than the competition, and that is Xanthicin. Why? What is astaxanthin? Well, it helps with joint and muscle function, helps with cholesterol, cognitive health, as well as a highly recommended for its anti-aging qualities. Available at getxantho.com, Newtown Square Pharmacy, Down to Earth in Kaka'ako, and Pharmacare Hawaii. Again, check out getxantho.com to learn more. That's getxantho.com.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, Hunter, the other big kind of development over the last week or so, signing day, middle of last week, kind of what we expected in terms of verbal commitments that had already come down. We mentioned some of the transfer defensive backs to come in, whether it's Anusiam Chigozue, Anusiam from Cal. You had Verdell Edwards transferring over from Iowa State, and then you got some exciting high school guys as well. Cameron Bell out of Florida, Tylen Hines, athletic, versatile back, 5'8", 170 pounds out of Plano, Texas, who can really scoot. You got the two local boys, right, the center out of St. Louis School and Ethan Spencer, and the safety, really a versatile defensive back in Kona Moore out of St. Louis School as well. Noah Kemma, the junior college transfer from Snow College, comes over, young man who lists the hometown as Lawrence, Texas. And then a couple of guys from California in Malachi Final, the defensive lineman out of Bosco, and junior Ta'ase via Melbourne, Australia, 6'4", 320 offensive lineman out of Aquinas High School in San Bernardino. So what do you make of basically the 9 guys who sign on the dotted line, Hunter, this past week for this group? As you know, they kind of tap into similar pipelines, whether it's the running back out of Texas, you got a couple of local boys, I think, which is a big deal, out of St. Louis. And then good to see, you know, as they recruit some of these Polynesian kids as well. You got to have that pipeline right here to Hawaii from some powerhouse football programs in California, yes, no doubt about it. But what'd you make of this group here? It is defensive heavy.
Yeah, you know, that was the thing that Coach Graham drilled over and over again whenever he talked about this signing class, was trying to get some of those pieces filled on the defensive front. To be quite honest, Jordan, I didn't know that we had those holes on the defense, other than maybe a few spots in our secondary. But outside of that, I'm kind of scratching my head going, I think we need some help on the O. But yeah, a few things come to mind. First of all, I have to tip my cap to that coaching staff, getting those guys to sign and sign early right now, especially with it being early signing day, not the actual signing day later in February. Job well done to those guys on securing those signatures right now, with so much that could happen during the holiday season and conversations and relationships with other coaches and other programs. So I have to kind of acknowledge those guys, because those are the ones that actually get this done and accomplished. A couple things, you know, just come to mind. You and I have talked about it many times, about our kind of worry of our coach's ability to recruit the Polynesian local players that make Hawaii football what it is. But we're getting a lot of immediately local guys from some big name schools locally, as well as some big time programs on the mainland. So I think that's really encouraging to see. Also, you know, a couple of these players cited the reason for their signing with Coach Graham and the Hawaii program is the discipline. So things that might have ruffled feathers in the last month or so, with how players feel the program is being ran, might be attractive for some kids. The same reason why you go play for a BYU or an Air Force, one of the military schools. You know, some players, with how they're raised, desire that discipline, desire, you know, in the next part of my life, I want to have that sort of code or conduct being paramount and put above everything else. And so, though it may not be everyone's cup of tea, they at least jive on at first experiences with this coach, and it's not horrible to see, Jordan. I'm glad that at least in some ways, some of his style is working with this new generation, because I really wondered if it had the legs moving forward, but time will tell.
Yeah, and if you can find guys that fit your program makeup, right, that'll be advantageous and bringing some of his guys in. The other one big thing coming out of signing day was the fact that AJ Bianco of St. Louis School, their starting quarterback, who I think the recruitment is continuing to heat up with his senior season going the way it did, where he was absolutely terrific. And he's got a big game coming up later today against Kahuku in the Open Division Championship game. He did not sign. He is a verbal commit to the University of Hawaii. He has not decommitted, but he basically told local media that, he wants to take the time and wants to be 100% sure and is going to wait until the February signing period. And so, on one hand, hey, he didn't decommit. He said he's still, keeping that verbal commitment. But on the other hand, he didn't sign it. He had an opportunity. He could have. And does that bring any doubt as to where he may end up, Hunter, and the fact that, hey, look, this recruiting class, I think there's a lot of positives. You can talk about it, at least with the early signing guys. But at the end of the day, getting the quarterback, that's the stuff that makes or breaks your program, right? Especially if it's the local kid, especially if it's from St. Louis. Like, those are the signees that, quite honestly, mean a little bit more than
Yes.
some of these other guys coming in, not to downplay the impact that some of these guys may have.
You know what? I applaud AJ Bianco for his patience. It's a sign to me that he's got great mentors around him, people that care and are invested in his future. I think we've talked about it before on this podcast. So much in this culture is immediate. Let's make a quick decision. Let's be reactive. That you don't have to sign anything until a couple of months from now. So there is no harm in letting things play out. Who knows, Jordan? He might throw 6 touchdowns today, and win a Hawaii State title, and might have USC knock on his door next weekend. I don't think there's any harm in kind of just taking your time, enjoying being a college, high school recruit, and just taking your time with all of this. And you and I both know the experience as a high school player and one from St. Louis looking at coming to University of Hawaii looked so much different at the beginning of the year than it does now. Especially you and I both know he's talking with Chevin Cordero any chance he can. What's your experience been like? What's this? What's that? There's been a lot that's gone down in the last month. And so to answer your question, yes, it is a big deal. And some players are signing right now, the ones that aren't, I think our friend Josh Pacheco said it well, that it's definitely loud that he did not sign, because he is the quarterback recruit from Hawaii as of right now. And when we haven't secured him just yet, it's definitely floating in the air at best.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think if they can eventually get him to sign, that would be a huge get. I mean, the biggest get that I think this coaching staff will have gotten to that point. So we'll see how that all plays out, and what the February signing period looks like as well for this group. All right, kind of running up against it, we'll head into our quick little overtime. Mine was just touching on the state football championship games. Of course, we'll have it for you on our family of networks here at ESPN Honolulu, as well as CBS 1500. You've got the D1 and Open doubleheader later on today. You got Iolani Lahainaluna starting it off. The two winningest programs in the history of Division II now sort of meeting up once again in the D1 championship game. And then you got Kahuku St. Louis. Not a whole lot more needs to be said, although I will say, if Bianco throws for 6 touchdowns against that Kahuku defense, USC better be calling him and knocking on his door, because that would be quite the accomplishment. That's gonna be such a good matchup. I think Bianco is the real deal, and that Kahuku defense is also just loaded with Division I talent, as it usually is. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then next week you got Kapa'a and Kamehameha Maui, as those two won semifinals yesterday in the Division II tournament. But state football championship time, it's always so fun. It is such a big, massive event, and to have it in December, like the week of Christmas, it's kind of been chaos at times, but it's going to be a lot of fun to see the season kind of culminate when things looked kind of bleak back in August, and to get to this point is just a massive accomplishment. But that's my little OT tidbit there. Hunter, feel free to take this home any way you want.
Oh man, yeah. Shout out to all the players. I'm stoked that we were able to get a state championship too put together with the powers that be, with the high school teams around the state. I'm stoked for those kids. They deserve it. It's been a tumultuous couple of years, but me and golf, Jordan, I have to bring it up. Perhaps since Ryder Cup this last week with the PNC Championship with Tiger Woods playing with his kid Charlie, I saw a tweet earlier that said there's only one person in the world that's more fun to watch than Tiger Woods, and it's Tiger Woods' son. He has all of the sauce, including his ability to spin wedge shots inside 100 yards. His demeanor looks just like his dad, not to mention all of his little tendencies while he's playing, the way he flips a club, the way he scratches his nose out there. It's literally a mini Tiger walking around there, and he's already got that fire, that tenacity. My goodness, it's fun to watch. And then also Tiger coming off that leg injury. He was definitely limited at best, but swinging the club great, averaging about 170 ball speed, which is very well above tour average. I'm excited as a Tiger fan of golf. He is detrimental to the game of golf. So influential in that sport, and so excited to see that come back. That's my overtime.
Yeah, incredible. I was riveted. I mean, that's my favorite event of the year now, watching those two guys just go out and play golf. I mean,
draining huge putts. The 12-year-old kid.
Better ratings than the British Open. Like it's incredible. He's so good. The craziest thing was Michael Collins of ESPN was saying he's not even like a top 100 player in his age group in Florida. I want to see these other kids, man. Those guys must be amazing because it's not like, I mean, Charlie's legit. Man,
Tiger made the game so much more competitive. The kids are unreal, but Charlie's a stud.
Yeah, he really is. He really is, man. That's a lot of fun. All right, well, we'll kind of cap it there. A feel-good story to end this 17th episode of HFN. We got a whole lot more to get into as we get into the offseason. We'll recap the Hawaii Bowl next week. We can get into how this team looks after all the turmoil, what kind of the developments are taking place within the program to try and turn the corner. And we got to get ready for the new year as well. The college football playoff just about a week away. The semifinals taking place on New Year's Eve, I should say. All right, Hunter, man, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family. And I will see you next week. Have a great time up there visiting all the folks.
You too, Jordan. Merry Christmas. And Jaron, our producer, bless you, man. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, shouts to Jaron, always letting us record at all kinds of hours and putting this thing together on short notice at times. But this has been another episode of Hawaii Football Now, presented by Xanthison. You can catch me on Twitter at Jordan Helle, Hunter at allaroundath. Feel free to leave us, drop us a note via Facebook and YouTube as well. Also, mahalo to our other sponsor, Spectrum Mobile. We will see you all next week right back here on Hawaii Football Now. Happy holidays, everybody. Enjoy the Hawaii Bowl.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.